Yep. Yeah. It's a game changer. Hello there, it's Paul from MYT, and this is our What's New in Logic 10.5 overview video. Now we're going to be doing a whole series of videos on all of the new features in a little bit more depth, but this first video is going to be a nice overall summary of exactly what you can expect with this brand new update which just dropped today from Apple. This is an absolutely huge update. It's the biggest update since Logic moved from Logic 9 to 10 all the way back in 2013. I have to say I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far, and I can't wait to jump into Logic and show you what it's all about. But before we get going, if you want to see more content like this from us here at MYT, don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and also hit that bell icon so you get notified when all of our new videos and live streams are happening. Right, with that out of the way, we can jump into Logic and see what's going on in 10.5. Okay, so we're in Logic 10.5 now, and you can see that the new stuff kind of hits you right from the beginning. So we're going to start with a new live loops, because that's kind of the main big difference. And as you can see here, Logic has opened up and it is very, very different to what you would see before. You've got a very, very interesting grid-like structure here, which might be reminiscent to some of the DAWs that you could care to mention. Now, a version of this has already been put into GarageBand in the past. And one of the things I will say is that GarageBand version was very rudimentary and very basic. Don't worry about this, because the version that's been put into Logic is actually really, really deeply featured and is very, very smooth indeed. So the way it opens up here by default is that it's opened up with all of our Apple loops, and you can also, if you want to, you can go into untagged loops. That is any loops that you've had analyzed already for smart tempo detection. You can drag and drop them straight in. So this is very much that scene and clip style of live jamming that you may be familiar with, like I say, with other DAWs like Ableton and like Bitwig in particular. Now you can just flip over into your regular media browser here and go to all files, and you can go to your bookmarks and you can drag and drop anything in. So what I thought we could do is that we could start by just going straight from the beginning in a brand new setting and get some loops going so you can see it working in real time. So from here, I'm going to go into my sort of Tom Middleton pack here, which is just a great pack, and it's got some great loops in to get us going. And you'll see very quickly here that I'll be able to jump straight into some loops, maybe get some percussion or some shaker loops going, that kind of thing. So we can maybe go for something like this. And we can literally just drag and drop it straight in. And then, as you can see, that's now taken the tempo and it's changed it right at the top here in the main LCD display here, the main transport display here for 125. You can then just punch in the play there. And you can start and stop it. And you can see there that you've actually got a quantize here, which is set up the top here for the bar. And you can see I'm still in play mode here at the moment. I can stop that, and you can see this little kind of countdown clock here going through the bar by bar basis there. So it's quite useful where that's concerned. But at the moment we're in this kind of like freeform sort of live jam scenario. Now let's say, for example, I want to go back. I want to maybe get a ride to go with that. Maybe something like this. And I can just drag and drop it straight in. Again, probably make that a little bit lower again. And we might just get rid of this guy for the moment in the instruments, and we'll go into more audio looping. Now I can play right here, but I can also go to the bottom here and I can fire off a scene. which is super nice. And you can do this now with any form of instrument channel. So let's say, for example, if I did want to produce a new software instrument channel, I can go up to the top here, hit plus. I can then go to something like, say, a retro synth, and then I can hit create. Now that will open up a retro synth, and we can maybe do some basic programming around this, get a basic bass line going, but obviously we need a few more drums first, so we'll get to that. And there's also different types of clips, or cells as they're known now, that you can throw into these particular channels, especially on the MIDI side. And you'll see what I mean. A lot of very sort of disparate, almost like afterthought parts of Logic, like, say, for example, Drum Machine Designer and a few other parts, actually start to come together here, because it's really, really well put together. So from here, what I can do is maybe look for some drum kits and maybe start to bring together some of these elements. So let's say we can go into single hits. So we'll go all the way back. We'll go to sounds and effects, and I'll go to drum kits. And maybe I'll use a kit such as maybe number 5 here. And again, you've got some single hits here. Now, what's really cool about a lot of this is that I could then double click underneath here and I can make an empty software instrument channel. And there is this new sort of drag and drop workflow within Logic now. They've made it a lot easier to work by just dragging and dropping various different elements. So what I can do here, I can literally drag and drop, and I can drag it into a plugin. So I can use the new sampler in either chromatic or optimized mode, or I can drop it straight into a drum machine designer. So what this has now done is laid out our drums in very quick sampler kind of workflow. Now, the drum machine designer, I'm going to be completely honest with you, is something that I wasn't a very big fan of. And in the versions up to this one, I found it completely unusable, and I didn't use it at all. When I was making music in Logic, I would either arrange audio directly within the tracks view for arrangement, or I would use something like drag and drop samples on something like Ultrabeat, for example. Now, with the new sampler, which we're going to get to in a moment, and you'll start to see all of this go together, you'll find that everything starts to come together in a much more natural way. So it's really, really cool. So you've got your clap here that you can play, and you've got your kick and everything else, all the samples that we dragged and dropped in this new quick sampler format, which makes things super quick, right? But that's not the only thing that's impressive here. One of the things that was really missing from the drum machine designer was an easy way to split these channels out, or split these pads out into individual channels. So you actually got more control, so you can put plugins on individual channels, amongst other things. So let's say here we go to our drum machine designer channel here, which is called Untitled, and we could call that drum kit. And we can then fold out, and that's what you see straight from the get-go. Everything is in individualized channels. So it means that you can just get on with it. You can treat them like any other channel. It's making a huge amount of difference, and the workflow is so quick on this. And one of the things you can do straight away is you can add in, you can right click, and you can create either a MIDI cell, which can be super cool, and you can double click, and it's essentially like a piano roll clip. You could program that in the exact same fashion as you would do a MIDI clip in the arrangement. Not a problem at all. Now, we can also use a different type of cell. So if I just delete that, and if I right click, you can create what's called a pattern cell. Now this is where the new step sequencer really comes into its own. And it's super cool because it makes programming drums like this an absolute doddle. So we'll get into this straight away now. So what we can do, we can literally just throw our kicks in here. We can just slide in our hats, maybe throw the claps in here, and maybe our open hi-hats. And we can throw in maybe a little double there, that kind of thing. And again, it's just super quick. So let's say I want to just stop all the clips here in the bottom right hand corner of the live loops view. I can just punch this drum kit. And we're off and rolling. Now I can obviously fire off the entire scene here with the whole of the drums, including the 2 loops that we already have. And we can go from there. Now what's nice about the step sequence view here is that I can flip into the velocity mode and I can decide the velocity of each note step. So this just sounded a little clunky here, so I can just drop the velocity, drop back into step on and off. And I can program that to my heart's content. Now, the other thing I can do is that I can extend that all the way up to 64 steps. That is nominally a 16-step loop here. But once I expand that out to 64 steps, it automatically duplicates the pattern across all 64 steps, which I think is a really, really beautiful bit of workflow optimization from the team at Logic, because imagine having to kind of sit there and reprogram the whole thing, and it's just a nightmare. Also as well, in this secondary edit mode here, you can actually go to things like gate, so you can change note lengths. You can do things like tying notes so they get longer. You can also change the note repeat, which might be quite useful in terms of adding maybe a little bit of flair to certain sounds and getting little interest and patterns and fills going. And you can do a number of different things, and we'll explore that in a little bit more detail. One thing I do really like as well is you can get really, really custom with each individual sample here. And we'll see this a little bit later when we get into more melodic stuff, is that you've got obviously the ability to change and have multiple lanes, and you also have the ability to open up an inspector and you can look at the entire pattern, the row that you're currently working on, or the step, which is super cool. And also as well, this gets really powerful because you can have user saved patterns and templates that you can open up with. So a lot of these patterns can already be saved and you can just apply them to whatever samples you're working with. Super nice, super cool. And again, you've got these different patterns and templates, and this is something we'll get to later on, certainly when we get into the more melodic stuff. But what I love about this more than anything is that I can basically stop that clip there and we can close all this down. And what I can actually do is open up a pattern cell on the clap, and I can put one on the 2 and the 4. I could put one here on the closed hat. I can create another one here. And not only do you have the option to do the overall pattern like this, you can actually program each individual part within the drum machine designer on an individual cell level, on a cellular level, if you will. And then obviously throw in our lovely hi-hat, and it's the same situation where you can just dial in the velocity and away you go. So again, I could hit this first scene and it's going to sound exactly the same, but we have a little bit more control over the individual elements and when they fire. And there you go. So your loop is off and running. Now, let's say, for example, I want to add in a really nice kind of bass line to this. Super easy. As you can see, because we're already in this step sequence view, I've got a melodic, what's known as a melodic template here. Now, if I wanted to, I could add in, let's say, a chromatic 2 octave. And it'll give you essentially between octave 1 and octave 3 in steps. So I could take something like, say, a D, for example, on this instrument 1, which is the more bassy kind of retro synth we opened up. And we can draw in a basic pattern. And again, we'll just get like a nice little bass arpeggio going there very simply. And we'll just roll down. And again, not spend too much time on it, but get something interesting going. Prefer the D sharp, actually. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I like the D instead. And again, I can just start getting some interesting sounds going there. And there you go. So you can see how this is all starting to work together really beautifully. Now I might want to add a little bit more percussion here. So what I'm going to do is go over to our loops and check some percussion maybe, or some top loop. So a nice loop like that. And then what I can actually do here is again open up another instrument channel. And rather than open it up within something like a drum machine designer or just have it be an audio loop that's just cycling, I can drag it on to the track header here, and I can drag it into either a quick sampler for original or optimized modes, again a drum machine designer, or you can go into Alchemy with various sampling modes, because Alchemy obviously being a granular and an additive synth and an incredibly powerful synth, you can do various different things with samples. But we're going to drop into an optimized quick sampler, and now it opens up and it's already sliced it up for us. So it's brilliant. So essentially what I can do here is that I could start to use, if I just use Command and K, I'm just going to use musical typing for this so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And yeah, you can I can basically play all of these different slices, because again, it's automatically put it into slice mode. There's also classic and one shots, and also the ability to change the pitch, the filtering, etc, etc. It's made things super quick. They have finally laid the EXS24 to rest. If ever there was a plugin that needed to be put out of its own misery, it's that. So fantastic to see things being brought massively up to date here and in such an intuitive way. So again, I can actually record MIDI straight in to a clip should I want to. So if I hit record from here, if I just get a basic going here, and there you go. So you can then see the notes that I've played in here, and I can then go into the piano roll and I can quite easily quantize it all. And I can play that on its own there. So just doing something very, very simple with it, and it's quite nice. And it's very, very easy to jump into this new mode with the quick sampler and just go for it. And features that we'll explore in other videos include the classic and the one-shot modes. They're really super interesting. And the fact that if you have a input set to the quick sampler, like you can do here, you can actually record straight into the sampler as well. So if you've got things like, shakers or percussion instruments at this stage of a production, or if you want to actually, put a vocal sample straight in, or whatever you want, makes things very, very quick and very immediate. So these are huge workflow enhancements on the part of the Logic team here at Apple. Now, what you can do from here is that you can drop in all of these ideas into the more traditional tracks view, because one thing you might be thinking at the moment is like, well, where the hell's the regular tracks view? Well, you can bring up the tracks view here just by clicking on the little icon here, and it gives you this really interesting kind of split view where you can see the beginnings of the arrangement here in the tracks view, and also you've got the ability to see the live loops view as well. And you can actually make things fairly custom in terms of the view, so we can give a little bit more room to the tracks view here. And what we can do is potentially start, and I can just transfer just a little bit of a jam, just firing clips off. And of course we could do this in a scene by scene way, and we can effectively block out an arrangement, which actually is my kind of nominal workflow within other DAWs like Ableton and Bitwig. That's kind of how I work, because I work across all DAWs. I work across Machine, I work across Logic, I work across Ableton, Bitwig, Cubase, Pro Tools on occasion, FL Studio in the past. So I'm not completely, loyal to any one DAW. I use the one that is the best for the job. And this is, as I say, has completely changed the game for Logic users. And as you can tell, a little bit excited by it. So what we can do here, as you can see, you've got all of these different clips playing. We can blank those off. And again, these little buttons become quite useful, because this little button at the top here that I'm clicking, which gives you the little directional arrows, when they're pointing to the left towards the live loops clips, that actually means that the live loops view is going to be playing. Flip it the other way, it means whatever is going on in the arrangement can actually play along. And that's quite a useful thing, because again, you might want to try different combinations of things before committing to an arrangement. So this is brilliant stuff. So from here, I can actually record in by clicking on this little button here where it says enable performance recording. I could literally now start with hitting record, and then being able to start with some interesting nominal clips. So maybe we start with something like this, and we start from the beginning, which might help. And you can see it starting to come in. And I obviously need to work on my quantization skills where the clap was concerned, because it was assured to me that that was actually playing properly in terms of the quantize, but we'll get there on that one, and maybe I will have to go back and just have a word with myself on that. Anyway, you get the idea. So from here, what you can now see, which is the main point of the exercise, not my awful musical type and percussion playing, is the fact that I can flip over now into the main tracks view, and I can tidy that away for a minute, and now it's kind of just like Logic, as you know and love it, which is a fantastic way of working. And again, me working in Ableton for a number of years, it kind of got a bit annoying when I was working in Logic, and I'd still have, like, you know, these little fusty bits at the side that I was using like a palette to kind of like drag and drop in, and it got a little bit annoying after a while because I was so used to working with the session view, for example, in Ableton. So this is a wonderful way of like getting palettes going of different ideas and then being able to commit to an arrangement. So you can see this is just a complete game changer and just the beginning, because as you know, with these Logic kind of updates, they tend to reveal themselves over time. So over the next few videos that we'll do a deeper dive into the live loops view, into the quick sampler for certain, as well as all the other new aspects that we find along the way. You'll see that there's going to be a level of depth to this, because there always is with these Logic updates. So again, as you can see, it's a completely different workflow. And again, what I love here is that it's taken not very long at all to just get a basic idea going, even though we're just jamming for example's sake here. And you've got, you know, these lovely loops going, and again, I work a lot with loops in Logic, and it's super simple. And from there, again, we can essentially work with the step sequencer. We can work across all of these lines very, very comfortably, and we're off and running as much as we like in terms of a new idea. So fantastic stuff. Finally, one thing I do want to show you guys is the remix effects, which I thought were quite interesting as well. They're a new addition. Now, these are almost like kind of DJ style effects, and you can use them on the main stereo out because it does a lot of really interesting stuff, but we can utilize them on a couple of different loops here because it'll give you an idea about what's going on. In fact, we can use them on the old drum kit here because it'll give you the same kind of effect. So we can add the remix effects here. And essentially what it does is give you these XY pads with various different effects assigned to them. And then you also have these kind of like interesting kind of almost like transform effects. And again, you've got a bit crusher here and you've got various other effects. So let's have a little listen to how they kind of work. And again, we'll essentially just go into the tracks view here and fire off the scene. And they instantly turn off after you finish playing with them, which is interesting. And again, all of this can be assigned to, you know, MIDI controllers, automatable parameters. They're also a very big part of the Logic Remote app, which is going to take more and more of a role as time goes on, as I can see it. And again, you've got all these other controls here, like the bit crush there, and this repeater, which is quite interesting. That's quite interesting because the vertical axis there is the mix of the effect, because it's not just an insert kind of thing, kind of like a beat repeat type effect. And then you've got these interesting kind of things in the middle here. For the DJ and all of us, right? turntable stop, and many other effects. So you can go into the top menu here, you can add in what's known as an orbit, which is kind of like a flanger type effect, very reminiscent of what you'd get on like a Pioneer DJM mixer. And from there, you've also got reverb. One for the warehouse ravers there. Delay. And you can get crazy with all that kind of stuff, and again, automate it all. Very, very interesting. So there's a little look under the hood of Logic 10.5 and some of the new features. I am very, very impressed by this, and it's not an underestimation to say that Logic's workflow has now changed forever. It's literally an unrecognizable program than what it was even 24 hours ago. It's really brought Logic kicking and screaming up to date for 2020 and has brought it way more in line with more modern DAWs. The best thing about it so far is that I think it's brought together a lot of very seemingly disparate parts of Logic together, and it's really smoothed out the workflow. So I'm excited over the next few videos to show you in a little bit more depth what all of these new features can do. So keep it locked here at MYT, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit the bell icon so you'll get the notifications of when the next videos are coming, and I'll see you in the next one.